happy to be here tonight. I'm glad to see you're keeping the tradition of protest alive. It's a somewhat of an uphill battle here in this particular place and time, but maybe that makes it even more important than it would be otherwise. I happen to be on the City Council, and I don't know what interest you have in the water project exactly, but maybe if I could take a couple minutes and sort of explain what the water project is about, and then please ask any questions. How long do we have for this?
1 hour.
Okay.
Good.
You are going to be really bored with the water project. And maybe you're starting that way. The city of Bend gets water from two sources that it distributes around to 23,000 customers. Some people in town get water from a couple of private water companies, but most people and businesses get it from the city's water project, water system. About half of the water on a year-round basis comes from Bridge Creek, which is up Skyliners Drive. I don't know how many of you have ever been up there, but it's a really cool place. The water just kind of comes down the canyon in a nice creek, goes over a waterfall. It's right opposite, sort of the canyon opposite Tumalo Falls. So about half the city's water year-round comes from the Bridge Creek water. It comes in a 10-mile long pipe all the way down to town. The other half of the city's water comes from a set of wells, and so it has this kind of dual source, the water from the creek and the water from the wells. During the winter, most all the water, virtually all of it, comes from the creek, and that's around 6-7 million gallons a day. During the summer, the water from the creek is not enough because everyone's watering their yards, and so a lot of landscape irrigation going on, and that sometimes is more than 25 million gallons of water a day. So the city with this dual water has kind of the base load supplied by the creek water, and the rest of it comes from wells. So a few years ago, the city public works department decided that it's time to upgrade the surface water, in other words, the creek water system, and because the two pipes, there was kind of two reasons they wanted to upgrade the system. The first was that the pipes that bring the water from Bridge Creek all the way down to town, one was put in 1920, the other one in 1950. They kind of made a mess of it at this point. The pipes are falling apart. They're on the easement. A lot of people have buildings, you know, that little section of where people live up on Skyliners Road. They've kind of put structures and stuff on top of the easement. So the city has a hard time getting to that. So they decided that the project needs a new pipe. And so this pipe would go along Skyliners, right, sort of under the bike lane. And they're wanting to replace these two pipes, each of which is like this big, with a new pipe that is like this big. And so that project will cost about $30 million. The other reason they want to do this water project is that the EPA has decided that all the cities around the country that use water from the surface, like from creeks, needs to do filtration, needs to filter out whatever's in the water, and in particular they need to treat it for cryptosporidium. A lot of people got sick, some people died in Milwaukee, not Oregon, but Wisconsin, in early 90s because of cryptosporidium, and it's a bug that forms a little tiny hard cyst that gets in the water supply, and then is not affected by chlorination. So you have to do something else to treat for cryptosporidium. I was actually in Milwaukee a couple of years ago, and I went out there, and sure enough, their water intake is right there in Lake Michigan. So you can imagine right upstream there's like cows hanging around in the field and doing cow-type things, and so it wasn't too surprising maybe that they got this outbreak of cryptosporidium. But in any case, the feds decided that the city of Bend, along with all the other cities in the country, and at that time, the cities that did not treat their water for cryptosporidium were like New York City and Boston and Seattle and Portland and San Francisco. And now pretty much everybody is knuckled under and decided to go ahead and treat, except the city of Portland. They're like the last city that's fighting it. But in any case, the city of Bend needs to do something with its surface water in terms of treatment. And the system that the city engineers want to do is costing another $30 million. So you have $30 million for the pipe and $30 million for the filtration. And as we all learned a long time ago, those two add together to give $60 million. And then in addition, they have another little aspect, which is they want to do a hydroelectric plant. And so that hydroelectric plant is like another $6 million. So we're talking like a $66 million project. This has been discussed there at the city for at least a year and a half in terms of public meetings and city council meetings and so on. And of the 7 city councilors, only one has consistently voted against this project. And the reason I have done that is because I just don't like the amount of money that it's costing. So with 23,000 customers and a $66 million project, we're basically asking each one of those 23,000 customers to pay like $3,000 for this project. And the way that translates is into greatly increased water bills from each of those customers. I've had this initiative for a number of years in trying to get the city to do water rates and sewer rates that are more fair to people. Namely, not have the small users subsidize the big users. They have been pretty resistant to those changes I've been suggesting, but we did make some progress on the water rates. Still haven't made so much on the sewer rates. But anyway, people who use a little bit of water are paying more than they should. People who use a lot of water are paying less than they should. Maybe you've seen other cases of this kind of thing in the country. But at least if you go fill up your gas tank in your car, you know, everybody pays the same. But that's not true of water and sewer at the city level. It seems to me pretty simple to just charge everybody for how much water they use. But that's not the way it is. The small users pay too much, the big users pay too little. So that's kind of another reason I've not been happy with the city and the way they're doing this water project, because I know that as this $60 million bill comes due, it's going to be all the small users who are paying most of the bill. It's just not right. But like we all can see, it's not that unusual. But anyway, we have to make our stand wherever we can on these things. And so I've consistently voted against this project. I wish that the city would have taken a much more global look at the options when it comes to looking at what the future should, you know, how the future should unfold in terms of the water, in terms of the sewer, in terms of all of its big projects, because these things are really expensive. The bad part about it is that besides the water project, there's also the sewer project, which will cost even more, and then now the city is going to be doing a bunch of big road projects as well. Once again, I've observed that it's the small people who are paying more and the big people who are not usually paying their fair share. The city has, like most cities in Oregon, in fact all cities as far as I know, something called system development charges, so new development is supposed to help pay for new infrastructure. The city has kind of a sketchy record of making sure that all the new development really does pay for itself. And that's one of the reasons the city is really behind in a lot of these infrastructure projects. So I guess that's kind of an introduction. I'll just ask anybody for any questions. Sure.
I understand that they privatized the water system in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Was that, the first question is, was that a result of this water problem? And do you foresee then going into a privatization project on water or sewer?
I didn't know Milwaukee had done that, but
No, they did, and now most of the people can't afford water.
yeah, I've never heard any such suggestion around here. But I do know that whole question of kind of privatization of government services keeps coming up. And there's kind of a group of people who think, boy, the government screws up everything. And so we should have somebody else do all the things that the government does, or at least a lot of them, so-called outsourcing. Well, I think you would all agree that we've seen plenty of cases where the private sector really screws things up too. And a lot of times those screw-ups in the private sector might not have happened if the government had been paying attention to its regulatory function. But as far as privatizing the water, yeah, some places have done that, and I doubt if it's generally resulted in lower water bills. One of the things I've been suggesting when I have another opportunity to vote against the water project, I try to make the point that one of the reasons this project costs so much is because something like $15 million is going to pay an international engineering firm for doing the design and construction oversight. That's nothing to do with the actual construction, but it is to do with the design and the project management. That's a huge amount of money. They were actually burning like $1 million a month just starting the design on the water project. I find that pretty objectionable, actually, that these huge contracts go to these big engineering firms. In my own field and background, there's work in the aerospace industry. And you're all way too young to remember President Eisenhower. I know I am, but as he got out of office, he said, got to be careful of the military-industrial complex. I think what we have, what the city of Bend is working within is sort of the utility public works engineering firm complex, because they outsource all of the project design, the project management, and that is then undertaken by these private companies that charge $200 an hour or more for their engineers and for their quality control people and all that. And I think a well-run city would have more of that function done in-house at a much lower cost. It's not a panacea, because like I say, we've all seen cases where the government screws up things also. But a proper mix of how much is done in-house and how much is contracted out would, I believe, and based on all my experience, result in a much lower cost for these water projects, and would result in lower, there's still going to be rate increases for all the water customers, but they would be less than they need to be, or less than they will be under the current system.
I'll keep count of who's next with their hand up.
Thanks.